Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hello, Liberation Nation. This week, The Half-Life by Rachel Beanland is a novel set on a remote Italian island about a Navy wife's reckoning with power, love, and the price of staying silent in the atomic age, or as I call it, radiation, but make it sexy. I love this book, and so I reached out to Rachel and her team a little while back to see if we could do a special Drinks in the Library episode, and I was thrilled when she said yes. All right, Rachel Beanland is the author of the novels The House is on Fire and Florence Adler Swims Forever. Her latest novel, The Half-Life, is coming out July 14th, which, if you're listening to this on the date it is airing, is today. So go out and get a copy now. We had an incredible conversation about her latest book. Rachel is a Richmond author, and I was just so thrilled we could make this happen. And I love The Half-Life. It is the perfect summer read, so go out and get it before your vacation. Our drink this week is an Aperol Spritz, so Italian, and it's the perfect drink to pair while you're reading The Half-Life. Okay, also, I'm excited to tell you this week, for our Patreon subscribers only, an episode will be coming out later this week. That's patreon.com/drinksinthelibrary, and we're going to be discussing Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. So if you've been thinking about joining us over there, this is the time to do it. Okay, let's get to it. All right, Rachel, I am so excited that we are here together tonight to talk about your new book, The Half-Life. I wanted to talk to you for a while. I've got a copy of The House is on Fire here with me, and you're a fellow Richmond writer. Well, fellow Richmonder, I am not a writer.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here with you. And yeah, I'm excited for us to be able to talk.
Yeah. And I was reading The Half-Life. I got an advanced reader copy, and I was like loving it so much. I was reading the description, and it's about radiation, but then it was like, but make it sexy.
Need to put that on a bumper sticker, radiation, but make it sexy.
Yes. So that's sort of like the vibe, and I was like, okay, I'm going into this. And I was like, that's accurate. I wanted to ask you, so the story, I guess start us with the story and our protagonist, Eileen.
Yeah. So The Half-Life is set in the 1970s. We begin the story in Charleston, South Carolina, where Eileen O'Malley has grown up. She is 23. She's kind of floundering. Her brother died a couple years earlier in Vietnam. She had been in college at the College of Charleston and has dropped out and is just kind of trying to figure out what her life even means as she moves forward. And she meets a guy, Paul Archer, who is a naval officer, and it's a quick romance, as many romances are. And he already has orders to La Maddalena, Italy, which is a tiny island off the coast of Sardinia. And so when faced between two choices, this is something that happens to a lot of people who end up as military spouses, right? Either you're going to break up or you're going to go with them to their next destination. She decides she's going to go. And she marries Paul, and they set off on this kind of double adventure, right? Because they're setting off on the adventure of being married and then the adventure of showing up in Italy and living this Italian life for what will be a 2-year assignment. And when they get to Italy, everything is not quite what she expected. And that's kind of where the story picks up.
I wanted to ask a little bit about your experience writing it, and also your history with Italy and that area as well, and what inspired you.
So my dad was in the Navy. I think I've probably always had a tangentially military book in me. And I grew up as a Navy brat. And I know we've moved on to saying We have nicer terms for military brat now, but that was what I was called when I was moving around every 2 years. It's called a Navy brat. And we lived in a lot of fabulous places, but a place that was extremely memorable was La Maddalena. We lived there between the years 1986 and 1988. I was 5 when we moved there and 7 when we moved away. I went to an Italian school for 1 year. I went to the American school for the other year. My siblings and I kind of roamed around the piazzas and the beaches and just had a grand old time. And of course, as a kid, I had no idea why we were actually there. Other than that my dad was in the Navy and I knew he worked on a submarine tender, which is a boat that tends to submarines. So you've got all these nuclear powered submarines. At this time, it was the Cold War. They're in Russian territory a lot. They're all over the Med, and they need to get repaired and resupplied, and don't want to go all the way back to the East Coast to do it. This is why you would put a submarine tender somewhere. I went back to La Maddalena in 2019. It was the first time I'd ever been back. So a difference of 31 years. And in that time, the Americans had left La Maddalena. Like, we pulled out in 2008. And so everywhere I went for the week I was in La Mad, I was looking around for kind of like the evidence that we had been there, right? Because this was the La Maddalena I knew.
Yeah.
And a lot of that evidence was gone. Buildings had been redeveloped. Progress, of course, marches on. And then there were other parts of the island, other places where Americans had lived, my old elementary school, that had been kind of abandoned in 2008. And I found that to be really fascinating. It was almost like looking at an archaeological site. There used to be this American community and it is no more. And I just started to think, wow, I lived here and it was just my life. But there was this kind of period of time in which Americans and Italians lived and worked side by side. And I know about it because I was there. But a lot of people don't know about it. And I started to wonder if I could write a novel set in this community. And then I went home and started reading a bunch. I was working on The House Is on Fire at the time. And the more I read, the more I realized that, wow, this was actually a really politically fraught time. And there were a lot of challenges to the Americans being there. And there were a lot of Italians who didn't want the Americans there. And so just the more I dug, the more I realized, yeah, there's absolutely a novel here.
Yes. So I have questions about your experience writing it, but I also wanted to kind of dive into the story and what happens to Paul and Eileen once they get to the island. Because a lot of this, it's funny, this book is about radiation on a country and having Americans around on their subs. But I interviewed Heather Morris, who's in Australia, and she's in New Zealand. And she was saying that in New Zealand, they would not allow any American nuclear submarines. They have 100-mile radius or something.
Because they're smart.
Yes. So, but it was interesting to me that I heard of it there just a few months ago with her. And then reading this, I was like, oh, this is what was going on. So, yeah, tell us.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are all kinds of rules about where nuclear submarines can go and where they can't go. And people really don't like them near major population centers because they're carrying around reactors, right? And so there is a lot of regulation, and Americans have their own set of regulations about what can and can't happen in a port with a nuclear submarine. And then each country has their own regulations. And as I was doing the research, I realized, yeah, absolutely, there are some countries that say, no way, Jose, we do not want this anywhere near us. And then there are other countries that say, it's okay, but we've got more strict guidelines. But I think one of the issues in Italy in the post-war years was that they were not in a good position to be able to make any demands, right? And so I think that's one of the bigger questions about just American expansionism and military expansionism in general is who's got the power, right? And the people with power get to dictate the terms often. And the terms aren't always to the benefit of local residents. Sardinia has faced this on a number of fronts, not just dealing with Americans, but Sardinia has been the site of a lot of weapons testing over the years because they're so rural. It's been deemed kind of like a a good spot to do that. And they've had there's just been kind of a mess as a result of that. So yeah, I was definitely thinking a lot about these issues. And I believe you when you say that New Zealand does not let nuclear hurricanes in their ports.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's salient right now. I guess maybe it's in the water, and maybe it's a poor thing that you're bringing the story to light a bit to talk about some of the sexiness with Eileen. Like we were saying, she's also kind of on a coming of age journey. Would you say that?
Yeah, definitely. She is 23, but that's not, you don't have it all figured out at 23. And I really did want to write a character who was in her 20s and married, but without all of the answers. And I think I was particularly interested in early marriage. I'm in an early marriage. I mean, it's not early at this point because I'm 45, but we got married when we were 22. And in fact, just celebrated our 23rd anniversary days ago.
Yeah.
And for us, it worked out. But I think we were radically different people when we got married. And I think we just got lucky in that we've been able to kind of grow together and maintain a connection as we've changed into the people we were going to become. And I was also thinking a lot as I was writing this book about my father. And my father, he had an early marriage that did not work out. And I think he was married about 3 years before he married my mom. And no kids, kind of, they walked away. But I thought about that a lot because that was an instance where walking away was the right thing to do. I mean, right thing to do from where I'm standing, right here, if they hadn't walked away.
Yeah.
And my dad, I was very interested in my dad's first marriage because I didn't think it gave him any sleepless night. Like he never disparaged his first wife. He never talked about her at all. It was like, in fact, I didn't even learn he had been married until I was 14. It was just such
really?
Yes, it's like a whole story. He thought he had told me when I was young. I didn't remember it. And then like he retells me when I'm 14 and I was like, what? You were married? But this is all to say that I was also interested in the fact that we can make mistakes in our 20s, correct them, and it's never too late. And we have to recognize that we're not done becoming the people we're going to become.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And you can see, I liked how you wrote about Paul and Eileen early on in the relationship, and you were talking about good, happy moments. And you say in that part, you're like, I tell you the good, happy parts so that you understand a little bit more about our relationship for the later parts.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so one of the fun parts about this novel, this was my first time writing in first person. And it was also my first time using retrospection like this. So Eileen is telling you this story from the future. You don't know exactly when in the future she's telling the story from, but you get the feeling that she is, in fact, telling the story, right?
Yeah.
That she knows how it ends and she's choosing when to reveal information, right? And so, and there are a few little instances where you get the feeling, oh, she's telling the story to someone in particular, maybe, right? And that kind of gets slowly revealed. But yeah, I didn't want to write a bad marriage. I wanted to write a complicated, real marriage between two people who don't know each other very well, but are committed to making it work. They want it to work. And what does that look like, especially in the 70s with a lot of other pressure coming at them from all directions?
Right. Yeah. So I love that part. And then as she's in Italy, I do want to kind of talk about, and we're going to try not to we'll do a cut before we get to the real spoilers, but she starts to hear things about some of the radiation, and she starts to learn Italian.
Mhm.
And through her Italian teacher, I think she meets Teo through her Italian teacher. Is that correct?
It's a combination of like,
Yeah.
she ran into him once in town. I mean, La Maddalena is a very small place. So
Okay.
usually when you're writing,
Mhm.
very worried about writing in too many coincidences. And so you
Mhm.
don't have people constantly bumping into each other because that's how we really live our lives.
Right.
In the case of La Maddalena, the town is so small that you actually can run into. There was a guy who was very helpful to me as I was researching the book, and I met him one of my first days on the island. He was an American guy who was married to an Italian and lived over there. And I think I met him the first day, and then I bumped into him every single day for the next. I mean, we maybe sometimes twice, 3 times a day. Like, it is a very small town
Yeah.
on the island. So very reasonable that she would have bumped into him, but then she realizes that he is the nephew of her Italian teacher.
Yeah. And he's a journalist in Italy. And I think that's their connection kind of starts. And he starts sowing the seeds of maybe not doubt, but questioning things. Like you said, Eileen is very young. And I think that makes it so it's easy for you to just say whatever this kind of authority figure, be it the U.S. Navy or your husband, is telling you, you're like, okay. But then he starts to draw into her, hey, have you thought about this and that? Do you want to tell us how that kind of progressed and what it was like writing that?
Yeah. I mean, Eileen was a girl who'd grown up in Charleston, but Charleston in the 70s, not Charleston now. So Charleston's gotten a lot fancier in the last 50 years. And she's a really regional girl. She's not traveled a lot. She hasn't experienced much. Her brother going off and getting killed in Vietnam is the most worldly thing that's ever happened to her. And she doesn't understand that. She wishes she understood it, but she doesn't understand it. And so I think I wanted to write a character who, in the beginning, accepts everything on face value, including statements like your brother fought hard for his country and like all of the kind of platitudes that you're served up, everything. She just kind of accepts it, the party line of American heroism and all the rest of it.
Right.
And then as she comes to know herself better, as she comes to know the world better, she naturally begins to question the stories she's been told. And I think that that's very natural for anyone who's ever gone off to college or moved somewhere new or had to immerse yourself in a country where you really don't know the culture or the language. You do have to put yourself through this education, and the education ends up making you a little wiser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other side.
Yeah. And you've lived in Charleston? Did I pick that up?
Yeah. So I lived in Charleston for 5 years when I was a kid.
Okay.
I was born in Groton, Connecticut while my dad was in submarine school. And then we moved to Charleston, and he had 2 tours in Charleston.
Okay.
On a submarine. So he was gone a lot, but my mom and us kids were based in Charleston. And then I ended up going to the University of South Carolina. My dad was from South Carolina. So the University of South Carolina, I went as an out-of-state student, but it had always kind of been what I thought of as my in-state school while we were moving around. And so when I was in Columbia, we would frequently go down to Charleston. And in fact, right after I graduated from college, I had an internship in the media relations department at the Spoleto Festival in Charleston for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And so I lived in the college Charleston dorms. And so I've had Charleston in my life at various times. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you watch Southern Charm? I have to ask.
No, I've never even heard of it. Is it reality TV?
Yes. I've watched it from day one, and it's incredible.
I need to find it. Because I'm going to the University of South Carolina. I went in 1999, and it's still very much Southern school. I mean, It is today, but I think the South is evolving so quickly but yeah, when I showed up there and it was like, you're going to dress up for football games and you're going to join a sorority and you're going to, but because I had been a Navy kid, I was so used to moving somewhere new and being like, okay, what do I have to do? That I was like, okay, it's like I'm in a foreign country. I'm just going to roll with it. And I had a great a great time at the universities.
Yeah. It's an incredible school. They've got some great schools down there. But yes, Southern Charm, it might inspire another book. You never know.
All right. Okay. Check it out.
Oh, I did want to ask about your time in Italy because I was like, well, let's have the drink be an Aperol Spritz. It's so Italian. So, and I was like asking you before we started recording if it was too cliche. So, do they drink Aperol Spritzes in Italy?
They drink them all the time. I can't vouch for how many were being consumed between 1974 and 1976, but I do know that I drank a lot of them on my research trip and anytime I've ever been back since. So you're in good hands with an Aperol Spritz. I feel certain.
Yeah. And it's half club soda. So, it's very light. And
Yeah. Oh no, there's nothing like one. And today's so hot. I mean, there's a like an Aperol Spritz.
yes, I I'm enjoying it. So, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between Eileen and Teo and how that evolves as well, because he's sort of pulling her out of her haze of he's encouraging her to question things, and then clearly, and I love a slow burn crush where you're just like, when is it going to happen? And I got it in this.
Totally a crush, right? I mean, he likes her. You know, he likes her. She's completely unattainable. She's an American. She's married to a naval officer, and she is really trying to make her marriage work. I mean, she's committed to her marriage. So she's off the table, except, right, that he is completely different than the guy she married. And that becomes more glaringly obvious as the months progress and as she becomes more involved in the politics of the island and the environmental activism that's happening on the island and just comes to know the characters. I mean, I felt like this book was always a book about character. Yes, there is plot, obviously. You want to know what's going to happen to Eileen. You want to know what's going to happen to Teo. You want to know what's going to happen to Paul. But I also just wanted to spend a lot of time with these characters and know them. And yeah, and I think the whole situation's kind of killing Teo for a while.
Yeah. Yes. I was feeling for him, but like I said, it's going to happen. How did you, and I don't think I got this yet. How did you get to find out about like all of the environmental impacts that were going on?
Well, okay. So a super, super helpful book that came out a few years before I started writing, which was so great, there's a book by a guy named David Orsini, who is Italian.
Okay.
And he studied in the United States, and he put out a book called The Atomic Archipelago. And it is about the military and the military being in La Maddalena and the subs and the accusations that were kind of being fired at the military about the contamination and what happened as a result, and just kind of a lot of the stuff that shows up in this novel. He had done a lot of legwork, and he was also super great about when I reached out to him and told him what I was working on. He had gathered a lot of documents, like old welcome packets from the NSA La Maddalena that they would send to the Americans who were being stationed over there to kind of say, here's everything you need to know about moving to Italy and about La Maddalena. And so he had some really great documentation that he was able to provide to me that was super helpful. So that was just a nonfiction book that was great. And then another big source for me, which didn't deal as much with the environmental issues, but just in terms of getting a feel for the military and how the Navy community was kind of interacting, was I had a guy who loaned me all of the old NSO notes, which were the newsletters from the compound, for the kind of time period that I was looking at. And he had them, and I could scan them and then kind of refer to them whenever I wanted. So I had a really good picture of kind of what the Italian government was doing and what these environmental agencies were doing, and then also what the Americans were doing day to day. And then I also was researching, I was talking to a lot of Americans who had been stationed there at this time. And that for me was one of the big differences with this book and my other two books, is that I had moved forward enough in time that I could call people on the phone and say, hey, you were in Italy between the years 1974 and 1976. And they'd be like, yeah. And that's been great. I just got an email yesterday from a woman who saw my book promoted in Book Page.
Okay.
And she says, my husband worked in the supply department on the USS Orion, which was the submarine tender that my dad worked on in the 80s. And she said he was there between 85 and 87. And I realized, if he was a senior submarine officer or a supply officer, he was my dad's boss. And I said, I think your husband was my dad's boss.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he was.
Wow.
No, I mean, this is all to say that you can still find a lot of people who were there at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to the spoilers a little bit, but I also want to, before we do that, for the people that haven't read the books, so they can turn it off, but to give a little bit of teaser, I guess. I always ask for what would you say is the vibe of the story, and I realized I didn't give you that question beforehand, so I mean, I was thinking it's got the women, you've got a little bit of the women, right? Absolution by Alice McDermott.
I loved Absolution.
Yeah, I loved Absolution too. But I would add a little, and then imagine it's like a Sophia Loren movie.
Yeah, absolutely. A little Beautiful Ruins. A little.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many great books set in Italy. Call Me by Your Name, Under the Tuscan Sun, right? There's so much stuff. We've got such a rich amount of literature we can pull from that's set in Italy that I guess I'm honored to just be even in the oeuvre. But yeah, I mean, I think Simon and Schuster in their marketing stuff described it as sexy and atmospheric. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a cool car, right? They're driving around Italy in their cool car, and
yeah, I was thinking a lot also about Rachel Kushner and the Flamethrowers, Creation Lake. And I mean, she's really interested in politics in Italy in this same time period. Like, and even I haven't read this book yet, partly because I was like trying to wait and not read it until I was done writing this. But the book that came out last year, The Bombshell, that takes place, I think, in Corsica. But yeah, I mean, this was very much like a time in Italy when people were living under the threat of some domestic terrorism. And even when I would ask guys in the military that I was talking to who had been stationed over there, when I would ask them about the troubles that the island was facing at the time and the protests, and everyone had a tendency to tell me, it was the Red Brigades. It was the Red Brigades. And this was a communist group that were terrorists. And it's way more complicated than that, but it was like they were an easy scapegoat. And I think there was a lot of that at the time, a lot of scapegoating on both sides. So I don't know.
Yeah. So, but it's a complicated story for sure. Hi, I'm jumping on here real quick. If you do not want any spoilers, please stop the episode now. If you're okay with spoilers or you've already finished the book, keep on going. So I have to tell you, I was reading this and I was like, is it going to be like Bridges of Madison County? Are you familiar with
I read the Madison County a billion years ago, and I do remember that they were unhappy at the end, right?
Yeah.
Not end up together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's because I was thinking about my dad's marriage, but like I always thought I was telling the story of this short marriage, right? Like a short marriage that wasn't going to be the real marriage, right? It was marriage that prepared her for the marriage. Yeah. And it's funny, people have told me along the lines like, readers really don't like infidelity, be careful with infidelity. And it's, come on, grow up, guys. Like sometimes this is a part of life, especially for like people who are young. And just for the record, like I haven't cheated on my husband. It's fiction, right? but I wanted to write like a woman who hadn't figured it out and trying to figure it out and was going to be like true to herself enough to try.
Right.
You know? And Paul's not a perfect guy. Like, nobody's perfect, but like he's not a perfect guy. But more importantly, he's not the right guy for her.
Right.
And so I always envisioned her staying in Italy. Like this is like the beginning of her life. Like this is the beginning of her figuring out what it is she wants. And it's not going to look like being a good Navy wife, even though that's the tutelage, right, that she's received.
Right.
2 years she's there with Mary Lou and Laura and the rest of them.
Yeah. Well, and I love the tie-in with the title too, with that, the half-life, because I was like, as I was getting into the story, I was like, I get it.
There comes this point where you're asking yourself, am I living a full life? Or am I going through the motions? Is this everything? And I think that if you, in your 20s in particular, but really at any point, like if you say to yourself, this isn't me living a full life, and then you don't do anything about it, then that's really sad. That's the tragedy, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh, agreed. Yes. If anyone's out there not living your full life and you've got something inside you, you need to get out. You need to get it out.
Right. Go read The Half-Life.
Yeah. Go read The Half-Life. I do have to tell you, I was talking today, the coworker, and they haven't read the book yet. And I was kind of telling them, and I was like, and she did make a comment about infidelity. And I was like, trust me, Paul is not great. We need to get away from Paul.
Right. I mean, I get it on one hand. I mean, I don't want to glorify it, but but at the same time, this is a fictional character. And we all know people who have been in sticky situations with their marriages, and it maybe isn't what we want in our own marriage, but we're perfectly fine to hear about what's going on in other people's marriages. I look at it like that, like it's fiction, like reading it, enjoying it. You don't have to do it, but yeah. So, and ultimately, I just think I'm trying to put her in a better place.
Absolutely. It 100% worked for me. Like I said, radiation, but make it sexy. So it was excellent. I wanted to ask you what you've got coming up. I'm sure you're like super busy for the next couple of months, right?
Yeah. So the book comes out on the 14th and pretty much, so we're doing a big launch in Richmond at VCU Libraries. And there's a virtual ticket and an in-person ticket, and they come with the book. So, which will be signed. So that's on the 14th. And then I hit the road, and I'll be popping into bookstores here and there for the next couple of weeks. And then, and I think I'll probably stay pretty busy into the fall. I mean, August gets a little weird because everyone's on vacation. And so hopefully they're all taking the Half-Life on vacation with them.
Yeah.
I hope. But and then I'm always just trying to work on the next book because you can't, I mean, you can talk about this book, but this book's in the can. There's not much to do.
Yeah. How far are we with the next book? Are you researching it or writing?
I mean, I started to write, but this month it's been really hard because a lot of these kind of podcasts and talking to people and talking up the book and writing essays and doing all the things that you want to do to get your book out in the world. And I haven't quite let go of the Half-Life for right now, but I'm hard at work on something new, and I'm always working on something.
I love it. Well, that's what you've got to do, right? So keep it going. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I'm super excited. I do want to add in, it's a genuine from me. I think it's a great beach read, vacation read. It's just a good story. I think you can read it any time of year, but we're going to be dropping this in July. So people should pick it up and head out for their relaxations with an Aperol Spritz.
With an Aperol Spritz.
All right. Rachel, thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you. I've been wanting to chat with you for so long. So this is incredible.
Oh, no, it's great. I'm really glad we did this. And next time we are at the same event or whatever in person, come up and say hi.
I definitely will. Yay. All right. Well, have a good night.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending some time with me and my guest for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.